For those who are spiritually advanced, the concept of reincarnation is not an abstract belief based on a theory. For them, it is a well-established fact that has been accepted and been known in ancient wisdom for thousands of years and has been subsequently proved over and over again in daily life. The principle is primarily based on duality of humanity, that we are both mortal as well as immortal. Those who cannot or will not accept the fact that we are a duality with an immortal spirit and soul, and which during incarnation functions in a material body with which it is intimately associated with, may not be ready for these studies. Your understanding may come later, may come either later during this present life, otherwise may have to wait until you have a later incarnation. But as I have said many times in my other books, we are not humans who by coincidence have a spirit and soul. We are spirits with a soul that are having a human experience. For those who doubt us, it may be of value to you to know that I did not believe in reincarnation until I was well into my adult years. It was then that I had the experience, as described in detail in my first book, The Messages, of having been given the entire memory of a person that lived 2,000 years ago that you know as the Apostle Paul. I will not go into the details of those memories of all my experiences of 2,000 years ago, for that is not the purpose of this book. But I do know there are many thousands that did not believe in reincarnation until they had read that book, which became a New York Times bestseller. Once you've accepted the premise of the immortality of the human soul, then logic, when not obstructed by dogma, will compel you to the conclusion that reincarnation is inevitable. If the composition of humanity is considered with its many races and nations, with its variety of skin color, languages, physical, emotional, and mental characteristics, then some idea of its complexity will be better appreciated. The point I am emphasizing is the disparity between these individuals. Among the billions, there are those that die of starvation, and those who die from excess. There are those who possess nothing, and those who require many people to manage their personal possessions. There are those who still live as slaves, in comparison to those who have the power to dispose over the welfare and the life and death of millions. There are those who are imbeciles, and those who have gifted, brilliant minds. There are those who have serious illnesses, and those who are radiant with good health. And obviously, I can name many more contrasting conditions and characteristics. But finally, there are those who are interested only in their own well-being, in contrast to those advanced souls who are characterized by spiritual love, living their lives committed to serving humanity. If a person was only granted one life on earth, only a single opportunity to either succeed or fail, and with all these individuals so unequally equipped for life's challenges and struggles, how could such a state of affairs be justified and be considered fair? How could one possibly believe in the God of love, apparently favoring one with every conceivable advantage of life, and to another nothing? No intelligence, no worldly goods, no opportunities, and no spiritual consciousness? How could two divergent lives be brought into the world in such diverse conditions and not be given the same opportunities to experience life, to ascend and evolve in their goal to become at one with God and Christ consciousness? Impossible. For no loving creator would allow such anomalies to exist, in which we were provided just one opportunity to ascend and evolve and to understand our relationship with God, our Creator. And what of the life and soul of a baby or young child who experiences death at a very early stage in their lives. If they only experienced one lifetime, they would never have been given the opportunity to have use of their free will, to distinguish between right and wrong, to have made moral judgments, to have had an opportunity to understand the relationship with God. The church has taught since the 4th century that these infants would go to some place called limbo. There must be hundreds of millions of babies stored in limbo. I've discussed those absurd teachings in my book titled Time for Truth, and prefer not wasting your valuable time refuting that nonsense again in the great tomorrow. Fortunately for humanity, we do have a loving Creator, one whose wisdom and just humanity we can believe in. The shortcomings lie with humanity itself, who can neither understand nor interpret that which we have been provided. Humanity has been able to distinguish only a small facet of the truth of an extraordinarily profound system, and therefore formed this understanding on totally misleading information. Where has humanity failed in its reasoning? The answer and crux of the whole problem lies in the false teachings that evolution and redemption of the human soul must be completed in a single lifetime on earth. As I explained in my detail, Time for Truth, this began in the 4th century, when the Catholic Church distorted the teachings of Jeshua, Jesus, who himself had stated that John the Baptist was the reincarnation of the prophet Elijah, who lived centuries earlier. The Church wanted people to believe that salvation and redemption could only be achieved in one lifetime, and only through the Church. And that is why in 553 AD, at the 5th Ecumenical Council in Constantinople, the Church declared that anybody that continued to preach reincarnation would be excommunicated from the Church, and there would be a curse on them. Yes, the many differences between individuals are factual. They do form a pattern of human existence. But once the reason for these differences are understood, there should no longer remain any doubt about the compassion and love of our divine Creator. What we are observing in individuals are merely the current expressions and the stages of development attained by the many components of humanity, all whom are in a state of constant change, some at a lower level of evolvement and spiritual ascension, and others being well advanced up the stairs of their pyramid, becoming closer to the part of God within them and Christ consciousness. Humanity would evolve so much faster if it understood the truth. What would be understood is that our mortal life is only the physical instrument which is temporarily occupied by a God-given immortal spirit and soul. Our material bodies will no longer exist at the end of its lifespan, but our souls, together with the true essence of our eternal lives, are transferred to one of the etheric levels, depending on the spiritual development achieved in our current lifetime, that being how high a person has climbed the steps of his or her pyramid. Existence will continue on these higher spiritual planes, except the soul will now be free and no longer be encumbered by a limited physical mortal body. After a sojourn within a spiritual world, which in the earth years could be a short or a long period, we will eventually develop an urge or need for further earthly experiences and be born again. Your spirit is part of God's spirit, which gives you your immortality, and your soul is a reflection of your spirit, its personality, its current values and attitudes, and the memory and the product of all its life's experiences. It must have these lifetime experiences in order to evolve. So your spirit is in a perpetual state of change and evolution with every experience that you have in the material world. Your soul continues to experience and evolve until it becomes at one with the essence of your Supreme Creator. What humanity must understand is that your soul needs these experiences, and that is why we do experience our human lifetimes. Millions of years ago, Homo sapiens were chosen as the species on this planet that souls would occupy to experience the soul growth. This species provide our souls the ability to have dexterity of hands and feet and vocal cords they use to communicate with one another. The only influences exerted on these original primitive bodies in the beginning was to provide them with the self-consciousness needed to distinguish themselves from the animal world. For innumerable incarnations covering millions of years, these reincarnations are repeated, the soul gradually developing from bodies and needs focused exclusively on satisfying the physical aspects of existence survival. Eventually, our souls gradually evolve towards emotional life experiences and the development of our mental faculties. Once our souls started on that pathway, many different doors were opened for new experiences and development. By the way, let me interrupt you by saying you can see how this chapter was leading into the chapter I read to you last week. The above information may help you understand the wide diversity in type, quality, and characteristics of development that occurred among the billions of individuals which today mankind comprises. Every person's journey, from the beginning of your soul's first lifetime, has happened over millions of years, and every journey has been unique and one of its kind. So there's no question of an unjust creator favoring one person, or race, or community, or nation over another, rewarding some and penalizing others. For what we are observing are merely stages of expressions of a soul's journey, like reading one page of a book that consists of 5 million pages. To humanity's judicious eye, some of the experiences may seem unnecessarily harsh or cruel, but to our limited human understanding, it may be exactly what their soul needed to experience at that specific stage. We are today observing the human panorama of several billions of individuals on Earth, each guided by its own indwelling soul, each at its own particular stage of evolutionary development. Each soul is in the process of gathering additional experiences and on its long, long journey back to its original home, that of our Creator, becoming completely at one with God again. Remember, even if a person is at a very low step of the pyramid, we are still on the same path. Every soul has endured and will be enduring the same experience in past, present, and future lifetimes, and eventually will arrive at the same destination, only to proceed ever again, still further, on the eternal evolutionary path to the mysterious unknown. Let me interrupt again to say that in an earlier chapter, I explained to the readers about the pyramid, so they know what I'm talking about, even though you may think I'm not just interjecting it now for the first time to them. Let me continue. Regarding the time period in between incarnations, do not place too much emphasis on this issue, as wide differences occur in comparing the time periods that these occur. Some souls linger for very, very long periods in Earth years between incarnations before deciding to return to the mortal world, while others return very rapidly. Generally speaking, those experiencing very little evolving in their past lifetimes reincarnate much sooner. Such was the case of my last lifetime, which I described in my book Time for Truth, where I had died at the age of 22 after graduating from the Sorbonne University in Paris and was drafted into the French army and killed in Belgium in the First World War. In other words, I'm saying to the readers that I only spent a very short time, having died during the First World War, the early 1900s, and then reborn again in 1936 in this lifetime. I maybe should add that when I do my editing of this chapter. Let me continue. As your spiritual development proceeds, usually there's a longer time period between incarnations, so that much more time is spent in the spiritual world than in the mortal world, judged in Earth years. However, as more and more advanced spiritual people are needed in humanity, their returns to Earth will happen faster, for their need as leaders, as spiritual leaders for humanity. Normally, the decision to reincarnate is made by the soul itself, When this happens, your soul, assisted by a group of specialized spiritual helpers, will select suitable parents for your new incarnation. These parents are selected with care, with due consideration given to the environment which they provide you. Your soul is returning for specific purposes. So it's so important that selection of parents in that environment is suited to provide you the experiences that your soul needs. It could be an environment of hardship, of challenge and struggles, or it could be an environment of many opportunities, special gifts and doors ready to be opened for you. It is directly related to your karma and the experience that you need to be exposed to on your own soul's journey. It is not to punish you or reward you, but to help you along your journey to become at one with God and Christ consciousness. I will also share with you that souls often return in groups so that they will experience their new lifetime with other members of that group. The degree that these group members will be associated with one another during this new lifetime will vary greatly. Some may be born to the same families. Some may meet early in life and others very late in life. It will vary greatly, and your soul mind and their soul mind will recognize that. Will recognize each other through your soul minds and transfer the emotional feelings to your conscious minds. You will feel a connection with that person, such as perhaps overwhelming love, and not consciously know why. Or you may feel animosity and hostility towards that person, and also not know why. Of course, it will be based on your past life experience together. One person may have been your loving child, a spouse in your past lifetime. Or conversely so, your tormentor or torturer who may have made your life miserable. Group bonds can play a very important role if they're based on a common bond to impact humanity and the evolution of humanity. The members of a group can start revolutions, overthrow governments, create new societies, bring freedom and justice to their parts of the world, and change history forever, either in a positive or a negative way. It's happening even today, as we look at events around the world. I do not have to point them out to you. Just look at yesterday's newspaper events, locally, nationally, worldwide, and you'll see them unfolding before your very eyes. As far as soul life is concerned, your gender is irrelevant, since this is essentially an attribute of physical and emotional choice. For the sake of rounding off human experiences, the soul will, however, periodically choose to be born changing genders after many, many years of having the same gender. This will also provide you an understanding of the challenges to gays and lesbians. For example, a soul that has experienced many lifetimes as a male now decides to experience being born as a female. But that soul, in its first new gender incarnation, it will still have many of the attributes physically and emotionally as a female, as well as female desires and needs. This may take several lifetimes to make the full gender transition. Each additional lifetime is a male exhibiting fewer and fewer of the characteristics of femininity that were developed over many, many lifetimes as a female. Of course, that's the opposite experience when a soul that's lived most of their lifetimes as a male decides to make the gender transition as a female. Many advanced souls who've been delegated to some specific function in the service of humanity may be asked to delay their next incarnation or to expedite it. This will depend on the timing of world affairs as to when they are most needed. This accounts for when the soul of Joshua, Prince Jesus, will return to earth in human form again, as well as other past spiritual world leaders in history. I am well aware of how this applies to me, as I've explained in detail in the New York Times best-selling book About Me, The Messages. The contents in this book, The Great Tomorrow, began to be brought to me several years ago, but I was not prepared to receive it then, understand it totally, or was I then capable of transcribing it into words that would have been understood by most people. It came from several different sources. It was often very profound and complex and too difficult for me to process into the appropriate words. Then something happened to me that changed that dramatically. So I can now share these words with you, which my spirit guides often refer to as, in capital letters, the truth, the teachings, or the wisdom. I hope that you are benefiting from what we're experiencing together. For writing this material is having a profound experience in me also. In the next chapter, we will explore and do a review of humanity's thoughts and actions in the past that have influenced the world we live in today.